Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Claire Johnson was 38 years old. Every morning, she donned her black and white uniform with care, adjusting her apron like a suit of armor. She wore no jewelry or heavy makeup, just subtle lipstick and a silver beret to tame her dark hair. She worked as a waitress at a chic restaurant on North Michigan Avenue in the heart of downtown Chicago, an establishment with crystal chandeliers, marble columns, and immaculate tablecloths. The kind of place where cutlery was changed between courses, where the slightest click of a heel echoed on the polished floor, and where the customers, always in a hurry or perched on their social superiority, considered the staff an extension of the decor. Yet Claire was a constant and dignified figure in this universe. Known for her warm smile, unwavering patience, and quiet efficiency, she embodied that invisible elegance of the staff who makes the world go round without ever receiving the honors. She knew how to anticipate customers' needs without them having to speak, carry 3 plates without trembling, memorize complex orders without consulting her notebook. Every gesture was fluid, every word measured. But behind that impeccable facade hid a woman who had learned to survive in a world that never truly had room for her dreams. Because Claire was never meant to carry trays. She once shone in the lecture halls of the University of Chicago, where she studied linguistics with a burning passion. Fascinated by the musicality of tones, the structure of ideograms, and the history of civilizations through their words, she had spent years mastering 5 foreign languages: Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, Spanish, and Arabic. She had spent a summer in Beijing, 2 months in Kyoto, and had even published a short article in an academic journal on the regional dialects of southern China. But one call was enough to change his trajectory. Her mother, the pillar of the family, had just died of a heart attack. Claire, the eldest, had had to rush home, abandoning her ongoing thesis. Her little brother, Malik, was only 12. Her father had long since disappeared, and there was nothing left but debts, bills, and the cold walls of a modest apartment on the south side. Academic promise didn't fill an empty fridge. So Claire put everything on hold. She found a job, then a second. The waitressing position, well-paid and relatively stable, was the obvious choice. She told herself it would be temporary. A year, maybe 2. Time for Malik to grow up, for her to catch her breath. But the years had passed. Life, with its responsibilities, its fatigue, its silent compromises, had traced discrete lines on his face. That Tuesday morning, Claire had followed her routine with the rigor of a soldier. Her hair was neat, her shoes well-polished, and her order book tucked into her left pocket. She already knew the day's reservations, the preferences of the regulars, and the food allergies of the regulars. She silently met the gaze of her colleagues, young and old, all, like her, locked into the mechanics of service. Some admired her, others considered her an unshakable rock. But none of them truly knew her past, nor the dreams she had buried beneath the bills. The customers, however, didn't see her. They read the menus without looking at her. They raised their hands like someone calling out to an ATM. They knew nothing about her. Not her name, not her language, not her story. For them, she was the discreet, efficient black waitress, and that was it. At noon, as she finished clearing a table on the patio, her phone vibrated softly in her pocket. She felt a pang in the pit of her stomach. Malik, or perhaps the supplier of the small project she was secretly developing, a home-cooked meal delivery service for Chicago's African-Asian communities. She stepped away, checked that the manager wasn't watching, and headed to the back of the restaurant, a corner out of sight. The number was Chinese. She didn't hesitate for a second. She picked up. Hello? How are you? Hello? Good morning. Yes, this is Claire. Let's confirm the details of your order. Yes, it's Claire. Let's check the order details. Her voice changed immediately. She was no longer the self-effacing waitress from Chicago. She was Claire Johnson, the linguist, the project manager, the brilliant former student who had kept her passion alive despite the sacrifices. Each Mandarin word came from her mouth precisely, without hesitation, like a familiar melody she had never forgotten. She spoke calmly, confirming a delivery of imported goods, negotiating a price adjustment, thanking her interlocutor elegantly. An elegant businessman with graying hair and a piercing gaze sat in a discreet corner of the restaurant, observing the scene with subtle attention. Richard Blake was no ordinary customer. At 55, this man had built a hotel empire spanning several continents, with prestigious establishments from New York to Shanghai, Dubai, and Paris. Yet, true to form, he sometimes liked to blend into the crowd, far from the bright lights of boardrooms and red carpets, to capture what his employees and clients were really experiencing on the ground. It was his way of staying connected to reality, far from reports and figures. That day, he had been drawn not by the clinking of cutlery or the clinking of glasses, but by a clear, calm voice that rose discreetly above the hustle and bustle of the service. A voice that spoke Mandarin with astonishing mastery, precise, fluid, almost musical. Richard was sensitive to languages. He spoke three himself, and that voice had immediately signaled to him a rare intelligence, a depth hidden beneath an apparent simplicity. He watched Claire Johnson retreat to a corner, her cell phone to her ear. Her concentrated expression was a stark contrast to the polite, discreet face she showed customers. He also noted the modesty in her demeanor, the way she stood back, as if she wanted to disappear behind her apron. When she hung up, Claire was about to return to the ward, a little shaken by the conversation, when Richard stood up with natural elegance and approached her. "Excuse me, am I mistaken, or were you speaking Mandarin?" he asked with a sincere smile, without any condescension. Claire, surprised, felt a slight blush rise to her cheeks. She wasn't used to people noticing such details, and even less so to such an important businessman taking an interest in her. "Yes, sir. I studied linguistics at the University of Chicago, then spent a year in Beijing to further my mastery. But that's a bit of a distant past now," she replied, trying to downplay her expertise. Richard shook his head slowly, clearly impressed. "You know, in my travels and business, I've rarely met someone with such a profile. It's rare to find this combination of language skills and field experience. You seem as well grounded in reality as you are in an international world." Claire hesitated for a moment. Then, feeling confident, she opened a small door to her inner world. "I had to put a lot of things aside. After my mother died, I took on the responsibility of looking after my little brother. The restaurant is what keeps me afloat. But I still have this dream of working internationally, in an environment where I can use my languages and knowledge for something bigger." Richard looked at her with rare honesty. "You have the kind of profile I'm looking for a current project. I'm not promising anything, but if you're interested, I could arrange an interview. We're opening a new Blake Hotels branch in San Francisco soon, and we need someone who can handle international relations, particularly with Asia." The words resonated in Claire like a distant echo of a possible, almost unreal future. "Would you be willing to give it a try?" Richard asked, tilting his head slightly. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion but determined. The next day, as Claire finished her shift at the restaurant, her phone vibrated again. This time, the number displayed was a work number, unknown but official. Heart pounding, she picked up. "Hello, this is Jessica Collins, personal assistant to Mr. Richard Blake," her voice clear and calm. "Mr. Blake was very impressed with your profile and would like to invite you to interview for a key position at his new branch in San Francisco." Breathless, Claire remained silent for a moment, as if she feared she was dreaming. "The position is International Relations Coordinator. You would be responsible for partnerships in Asia, particularly in China, Japan, and Korea. This is exactly the area in which you have solid experience," added Jessica. Claire couldn't believe it. In less than 24 hours, her life, which until then had seemed stuck in a trying routine, had taken an unexpected, almost unreal turn. The days that followed were a whirlwind. During the interview, she made a strong impression. Her language skills, her academic experience, and her ability to understand cultural nuances and anticipate the expectations of foreign partners immediately won over the recruiters. Claire sincerely explained her journey, her sacrifices, and her ambition to finally get her real life back on track. At the end of the interview, she received a response as swift as it was unexpected. She was hired. The position was in San Francisco, a dynamic, cosmopolitan city, far from Chicago, far from her memories. The move was a shock. New neighborhoods, new faces, a life that sometimes seemed a million miles away from the one she had known. But this shock was also a rebirth. Surrounded by a young and ambitious team, Claire gradually regained her self-confidence. Each meeting, each international call, each completed project reinforced this sense of belonging to a world she had always dreamed of experiencing. Yet the road wasn't without its pitfalls. Her colleagues, often from privileged backgrounds, sometimes eyed her with suspicion. How could a former waitress claim to play such an important role in this multinational? A few furtive glances, veiled remarks about her atypical career path, subtle microaggressions, and sometimes awkward silences during team lunches reminded her that she still had to prove her worth, not once, but repeatedly. But Claire kept her head high. She transformed every obstacle into motivation, every criticism into determination. Her patience, rigor, and professionalism quickly became a benchmark. Slowly, respect grew, but above all, she never lost sight of where she came from. Often, late at night, alone in her apartment overlooking San Francisco Bay, Claire reflected on those long years she had sacrificed her dreams for her family. Those sleepless nights juggling shifts, bills to pay, hopes set aside. She remembered the face of her little brother, the tenderness of her late mother, and the strength it had taken to keep her head above water. But today, each new challenge, each success, confirmed to her that she had made the right choice. This position wasn't just a job. It was the sweet and well-deserved revenge of a life started anew, a silent but powerful declaration. Despite the trials, she had found her path. A year later, Claire Johnson stood in the heart of a bright and imposing conference room in Shanghai. Around her, faces from around the world spoke in several languages, a sign of the event's international reach. Blake Hotels had chosen this major conference to formalize its ambitions in the Asian market, and Claire, now the company's leading figure in the region, carried this mission with pride. Since joining the company, she had worked tirelessly, learning to combine diplomacy, cultural finesse, and business strategy. Today, she was about to negotiate with representatives of one of China's largest hotel groups, a strategic partnership that would open major doors for Blake Hotels throughout the Asia-Pacific region. Claire recalled the long nights spent preparing her files, mastering the subtleties of local customs, and adapting business proposals so that they were both respectful of tradition and ambitious in scope. She had imposed on herself an almost military rigor, but also active listening, convinced that success came as much from words as from silences and gestures. At the negotiating table, her clear, calm voice, tinged with an accent that was no longer a liability but an asset, guided the discussions. She managed to strike a balance between firmness and openness, demonstrating a keen understanding of the cultural and economic issues. When the contract was finally signed, it was a moment of personal triumph, but also of intense professional recognition. Richard Blake, present but discreet in the background, watched with a satisfied smile. He knew Claire's journey, her doubts, her sacrifices, and he now saw in her much more than a simple employee, a born leader. During a more intimate moment a few days later, he made her an unexpected proposition. "Claire," he said, looking her straight in the eye, "we want you to become Director of Operations for the entire Asia-Pacific region. It's a very responsible role, but I have no doubt you're ready." The weight of the offer crushed Claire for a moment. This position represented immense recognition, but also a colossal challenge. Before answering, she did something deeply dear to her heart. She returned to Chicago, to her childhood neighborhood. There, she found her brother Marcus, with whom she had shared so many hardships, and her entire family, reunited in their small, cozy apartment, far from the luxury and speed of San Francisco. This return was fraught with emotion. Marcus, now a law student, confided in her how much hope her success had given him. The neighborhood also seemed to be changing, but poverty and hardship remained. Claire organized a talk in the local community hall, attended by young people whose looks were sometimes incredulous, often wary of promises of success. With a firm and sincere voice, she spoke to them about her years of hardship, the death of their mother, the daily sacrifices, but above all about the power of perseverance. "No matter where you come from," she said, "no matter what obstacles life throws your way, if you have a dream, never let it die. Learn, work hard, keep your head up. Anything is possible." That day, Claire wasn't just a former waitress turned executive. She became a living symbol of hope, a beacon of light for those like her who had long believed their background was a hindrance. Back in San Francisco, she accepted Richard's offer. She was ready to take the reins, to show that the inner strength she had always carried, even in the shadows, could transform her life and the lives of many others. Claire Johnson, the modest, discreet woman who became a powerful international leader, had proven that change did not come from a stroke of luck, but from unwavering determination, from a self-belief forged in adversity.